Hello everyone, this is a creative embroidery tutorial with me, That Embroidery Girl, and today I want to make a sun bonnet. So I'm going to start off with some fine jewellery wire, around about 7 centimetres. I'm going to take these two pieces and then I'm going to twist them together and add another one and twist it together like so, so it looks like a spider. I'm then going to draw a hole, a tiny one first of all, and then the brim of my hat, so however big I want this hat to be. And then I'm going to draw the circle of my bonnet, so how big I actually want the hat itself to be. I'm then going to push these wires down through the fabric like you can see me doing now. This is quite tricky, so it's worth taking your time doing it and try and get them evenly spreaded out. And once you've done that, you're going to want to make sure that they're not sort of like a witch's hat, that they have a nice round shape to them. Now draw on some weave lines. This will be just kind of the direction that you want to start weaving in, and this is with a water soluble pen. I'm now going to add an extra wire line to the top of the hat, and this is in the area where there's gaps in the wire, if that makes sense, because we're going to end up weaving more and more thread around this, so we don't want too many gaps. So again, I'm just going to push that wire down. Now on the back, all the wires will just be straight down. So what we're going to want to do is once we've pushed them all in, we're going to want to bend them back on themselves towards the brim of the hat so that they're all nice and secure there. And you can just see underneath my fingers just pushing those wires backwards. And then that way, when we begin weaving the brim, we can catch all those wires and hide them. Now that's reasonably secure, I'm actually going to go ahead and secure it a little bit more by getting a fine needle and some thread and just stitching the back of the bent wires into the material, whatever material you're using. It doesn't really matter with this particular design. So you can see me there, just stitching, making sure that I've got all of the wire at that point where it bends. It's really worth doing this a good few times just to secure it so that it doesn't keep coming out, because there's a real tendency for it to start shooting out because of how the wire is. So repeat this process all the way around the hat, and then you're going to want to add a last wire, and this is so that we have an uneven number of wires on this hat, because when we're weaving otherwise we'll get a weave that shows some of the golden wire, which we don't want. So we need an uneven number of spokes on here. So I'm just going to add that final one, and it's a lot easier to do now because this should be really solid now with all of the thread and the fact that the wires are bent back on themselves. So add that final one, and I'd add it in an area where there's any gaps. So you could see that before I added this one, there was a slightly bigger gap than everywhere else. Now I'm going to bend that wire back and secure in exactly the same way. Now I have this jute or raffia thread. It's almost like a papery type of thread, and I've double threaded it on a needle, and I've got a ridiculously long amount. So working with this, you are going to have to work long amounts, okay? And I'm just going to start following the weave lines, stitching them in just long straight stitches. Now this isn't an exact science. It actually looks a lot nicer when it's a little bit messy and stuff, because it looks like a battered hat. So try not to worry too much, just put your lines down. And once you've done that, you're going to begin coming up and weaving at an angle. So you can see me here coming up near the first thread, and I'm just going under, over until I've gone in a nice diagonal line like so, and I'm then going to stitch that down. Now I'd recommend using the back of your needle so that you don't actually push through any of this thread, sort of split it. And I'm also coming up either side of the initial weave lines. So I'll come up, then skip a thread, then come up, then skip a thread, if that makes sense. Watch the weave process closely, and if you get any gaps, just push them threads down together. So you can see here a little bit more closer up how I'm weaving. I'm coming up and over, and the angles will change because of the angle that we laid the initial weave lines down. So don't worry too much about that. It just ends up looking really nice when you've finished. Under, over until you finished all of the brim. And you can see we have that difference in the weave, which actually looks really nice. So once you finish that, you're going to start your actual hat piece. So I'll come up again with a hugely over the top long piece of this raffia thread, and I'm just going to begin weaving under over in exactly the same way. Now do this really carefully, because your thread will have to be really long to cover all of this, because what you don't want to do is run out of thread, because reattaching this is a nightmare. You'd have to have a knot and it just doesn't look very nice. So go in with a huge amount of thread. I'd say probably around about 1 meter is enough, so that's 2 times the meter, which will be 2 meters doubled over. And just be really careful and just do it nice and slowly, and make sure that you're being really accurate. And you can see me going under over, almost like I'm making a basket. I'm going to keep doing this, being really gentle, making sure that my threads don't knot and stuff like that, until I've filled up the entirety of the hat. It's going to take some time, and you're going to need to keep on pushing those threads down. And once I've come to the top, I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I've filled it up reasonably evenly. But if I haven't, which I haven't managed to do here, I'm actually going to get to the top and start to stitch. So I will just cover that last little bit with some buttonhole stitch. So I've just put my first stitch in there, and now I'm going to add a second stitch, which is actually more of a buttonhole stitch, just to finish off. And that's just going to give you a nice clean look. And once I finish doing that, I'm just going to push the needle down right through the centre of the hat to finish off. Now I'm going to cut a hole in the back. That was where we drew the initial circle line. And I'm going to poke my finger up through there just to make sure that the dome of the hat is nice and round. And to finish off, I am going to add a cute little 3mm wire just around the bottom of the bonnet, like you can buy at the seaside. And I'm going to put the initial little tie there, make sure it's nice and down towards the brim. And then I'm just going to put a knot in like so, and tie a cute bow. And we're done. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that your hat turns out really well. Please like, comment and subscribe. It's helping this channel grow, and I'll see you soon.